All right, well, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our LeadHERS event today. My name is Sandy Perillo Simmons, and I am pleased to welcome you all. Joining us with Melissa to talk about mental fitness. So for our program today, we'll cover a little bit about Women United. We'll do an overview. I'll introduce Melissa, and then we'll share after Melissa's session some information on our Women United volunteer opportunities and some upcoming events and other. So our LeadHERS committee this year, believe it or not, is led by Melissa, who is president of O'Hara Solutions Group, myself, and Lauren Pereira. And one thing about the LeadHERS committee, this series actually grew out of a desire to connect with members during the pandemic. And we decided to continue it virtually as a way to just continue to connect with our members to skills and resources and to learn from members who have so much great experience to share. And this is one of the reasons we have Melissa here today. So in terms of our Women United group, we're a global growing force of 70,000 plus women dedicated to creating a world of opportunity for everyone. Members of our Women United focus on helping families achieve financial security by taking action for Alice families, funding to support United Way family financial stability initiatives and ensure scalable success. And we cultivate a culture of empowering women, including the personal, professional, and philanthropic growth of our members and program recipients. We've made significant impact. More than 1.8 million have been raised for financial stability through the organization's signature fundraiser event, Power the Purse, since 2012. And in 2021, nearly 1,000 individuals enrolled in job training programs that improved the employment potential in nearly programs to create and maintain budgets, increase savings, and reduce their debt. There are a number of ways to join. Either through your workplace campaign, you can select Women United when making your contribution. You can visit our website to sign up, and there are various member levels. So Melissa is a seasoned business professional who's passionate about motivating and inspiring others. After more than 2 decades of corporate and business success, she founded the O'Hara Solutions Group to help companies, individuals, and teams solve complex problems and take bold action. As an expert facilitator and top talent coach, she helps executives, leaders, and individual contributors discover hidden talents, helping them to increase their personal impact, be better colleagues, and become even stronger leaders. Melissa has many trainings and certifications under her belt, including a certification as a mental fitness coach, and I am thrilled to have her here today with us to share her knowledge and skills. So Melissa, over to you.
Thanks so much, Sandy. Appreciate it. And I really am thrilled to be with you today to talk about this incredibly relevant topic of mental fitness. And what we're going to talk about today is how to grow the 3 core mental muscles that allow you to thrive in challenging times. And I don't know about you, but lots of challenging times. But before we get into today's content, here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to imagine for 1 minute that you are standing in a long line at the grocery store. Okay, what does it feel like? Now, if it's like me in the past, I would be calculating, should I change lanes? You know, how many people are over there? I would be getting annoyed for someone using coupons, or how come they have a bagger and I don't have a bagger? And I would get through the line, but I would be annoyed and frustrated, and I would bring that feeling with me into my entire day. Well, now with mental fitness, things are completely different. I actually see standing in a long line at the grocery store as one of the best parts of my day. And through today's talk, I'm going to explain how and why it's different and how it might be different for you as well. So let's jump into today's content. We'll start with a definition. What is mental fitness? And we define mental fitness as the capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. So just kind of that simple. The way I like to describe it is if you're sick, you go to the doctor. But if you want to stay healthy, you eat right, you exercise, you might hire a personal trainer. Well, with mental health, there's a same continuum. If you have a mental illness or you have anxiety, depression, you might go and seek care at that end of the continuum. But what we're talking about today is what are the habits, the routines, kind of the preventive benefits that you can actually do in your life to have mental fitness and have that positive rather than negative mindset. There's a significant impact when we have that. So here are some of the impacts of greater mental fitness and resiliency. That's really what we're talking about. Enhanced performance, greater wellness, healthier relationships and communication, whether inside of work or outside of work. That resiliency or recovering from setbacks faster and reduced burnout. And I don't know about you, but all of those kind of check with me when I first started doing this work, saying, yeah, I'd love to be more focused at work and have better relationships. And this, for me, it's not just something I speak on, but I'm a practitioner. I actually do this myself. And I'll give you some examples of how that shows up. Let's talk about the research foundation first. So where does this come from? Shirzad Chamine is the author of a book. It's called Positive Intelligence. And that's really this mental fitness program that we're talking about. And it was looking at research done with neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, performance science, and some original research that was done. And all of this research came together. Some of the original research involved hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, Stanford students, world-class athletes, and over 500,000 participants from 50 countries. And all of that came and said, what really makes the difference? If you start to study what's the difference between the people who can do a really great job at bouncing back and those who maybe don't in the same exact situation, that's what I love about this. It's research-based and really practical in terms of how do we learn from that. And from all the research, what they found was that there were 3 core mental muscles that when you start to build them and exercise them, you can actually have that positive rather than negative mindset. So here are the 3 core mental muscles. They're the Saboteur interceptor, the Sage, and the self-command. And I know right now you're like, I don't know what any of those mean, but you will in just a short amount of time. So what I'm going to do is explain a little bit around the model and how those mental muscles show up and how we can start to exercise them a little bit more. Saboteurs, those are the ones that drive the negative side. Sage is that positive side or that kind of uplifting side. And those are the terms that we use throughout the program. Now, I want you to think about your head. If your brain was broken into 2 sides, that saboteur being that negative energy and that sage being the positive energy. And in fact, they're in different parts of your brain. So the saboteurs are generated from the brain stem, the limbic system, and the left parts of the brain, where the sage is that middle prefrontal cortex, the empathy circuitry, and the right parts of the brain. And so knowing that it just tapping into different parts of the brain helps to know kind of how we're wired and how we can start to train ourselves to tap into that that sage brain a little bit more than the saboteur brain. Now, saboteurs, they motivate you through negative emotion. So if you ever feel like I'm under fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity, you usually know that, right? It's like, oh, you feel kind of tight and uptight. The attention often when you're in saboteur is on the past or the future. And what I mean by that is I'm thinking about the meeting that happened last week, and I'm still thinking about the meeting that happened last week. Well, I should have done this. And you're going over it and over it. And it's usually negative emotion that's associated with it. Or you're thinking about the future, the meeting that's next week. And not in a way that you're preparing for it and feeling really great, but you're like, oh, that meeting, and I'm worried about it. And you're playing it over and over again. Thinking is really hard when you're in saboteur mode. When that part of your brain kicks in, you're not able to tap into wise decision making. It's really hard to think. Let's talk about the sage brain. So the sage brain motivates you through positive emotions, things like empathy or curiosity, creativity, laser focused decision making, and purpose. And when you're in sage brain, you're 100% attention on the present. So you've probably heard about like being in the zone. Well, when you're in the zone, you're definitely tapping in to your sage brain. And when you're thinking or when you need to think, it's much easier to think in a sage perspective or when you're tapping into that part of your brain. So there's contemplation and the ability to think more clearly, where thinking is really hard when you're in saboteur. So saboteurs are negative emotions, sage are positive emotions. Sounds kind of simple. And what I hear from people though is like, well, doesn't that keep me on my toes, Melissa? Isn't that a good thing, those saboteurs? And what I say is it might generate success, but not happiness. Can you think of people who, by all definitions, are successful? I'll use that air quotes, and yet they're just not happy. Those are people that are typically driven by saboteur or negative emotion. But here's the power of the sage. It generates your highest success and sustained happiness. So when you're tapping into that part of your brain, it allows you to make really great decisions, to be focused, to stay in the zone, to have enhanced performance, and you do it in a way that generates positive emotion. So that's the difference between saboteur and sage. When anyone ever asks me, like, how do I know, Melissa? I just say, if you are in a negative emotion, you're in saboteur. So if it's that anxiety, stress, if you're feeling calm, laser focused, you're in sage. So let's explore that just a little bit more. This 3-step process of building mental muscle. So the first one is to intercept the saboteur, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what they are and how they show up. But notice it's intercepting it. So when the saboteurs come up, and we're human, and they're going to, you're going to have negative emotion. That's just a fact. What we're learning to do is stop it in its tracks so that it's not a week later from the meeting that you're going over and over it, but you're able to stop it just within minutes. So that's the first mental muscle we're building, is intercepting that saboteur. The second one is powering up the sage brain. So how do we activate or work those muscles so that we can be more curious, more empathetic, that positive mind? And most important, what we've got is choosing a sage response. And what I say is, instead of reacting and not even thinking about it, we're now responding and we're making choices. And what that allows us to do is power up our self-command, or the muscle that allows us to switch from negative to positive. So let's go through each of those a little bit more, and then we'll put it all together. We'll start with the saboteur interceptor. So the master saboteur is called the judge. And I want you to think about the judge as that voice in your head. And all of us have it. So we call it the master saboteur because every single human being has this happen. And it shows up in 3 primary ways. So the first one is judging yourself. I'll give you a real example. For me, that judge is when I'm on the couch watching TV, is saying to me, you're lazy. You should be up. You should be doing dishes or cleaning the house. That judge is judging me for just sitting there and watching TV, won't let me kind of rest. So that's an example of the first way the judge shows up, judging yourself. Second one is judging others. This is where you're like, I can't believe they chose to wear that today. Or a colleague in a meeting is, I can't believe they won't shut up. You're judging others. And again, that's the second way that the judge shows up. And the third way is judging circumstances. And the best way to describe this is judging circumstances often shows up in, well, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I graduate from college, when I get that great job, when I find a spouse or have children or buy a house. And that every single happiness event is circumstantial on something else. In fact, a lot of times it's short-lived. When you get that thing, that great job, now all of a sudden, well, I can't really be happy because I need to get the promotion, right? And so for the third way that the judge shows up, it's often based off on the circumstances that you're in, as opposed to happiness being the place that you're in today. So those are the three primary ways that the judge shows up. And now what I'd love to do is do a little bit of a poll for you. And you could write anyone that you want. So what I'd love you to do is in chat, so open chat up, and answer this. Which way does the judge show up in your life? And it could be yourself, others, circumstances, can be all three. But I'd love to see, as I went through those, which ones show up for you. So I see a circumstances, myself and circumstances, myself, all three for sure, right? A lot of myself. It was interesting. I was just doing this last week with a group, and we had a poll there, and 92% of people that were in this, and there were about 300 people there, 92% of them said myself, right? Now, that doesn't often show up to anyone else. That's that repeated pattern over and over and over again in your head. How exhausting is that, right? How exhausting is that? And so just knowing that is one of the first pieces. Knowing and being able to intercept it, right? To stop the judge when it gets judgy is the first piece of the program. I'll give you an example, two examples today. I was in a exercise class this morning. The instructor was late. My judge just got really loud. I cannot believe it. I paid for this class. I can't believe that they're late. And I go to an exercise class to feel good, right? And yet I was just angry. Well, the good news is, because I do this work, I could see that within just a minute. And I'm like, okay, do I want to be angry for the next 60 minutes in this class? Or do I want to come out of this class rejuvenated? And so knowing that I was judging someone else was really helpful for me to be able to intercept it, stop it, and make a different choice. So that's the judge, the master saboteur. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move to the accomplice saboteurs. So this is a little bit different. Now, the master saboteur, the judge, everybody has it, but accomplice saboteurs are really based off of your wiring, your upbringing, your environment, and they're different for each person. And here are the 9 accomplice saboteurs. And while I'm listing them, pay attention, maybe think about which one might be showing up for you. So the controller likes to control everything. They feel like the more and the tighter that they grab onto things, the better control they'll have. In fact, it's usually just the opposite. The tighter that they grip, the less control they have. But that's the controller. The hyperachiever is always basing things on success. That next thing, that A, always, and success is elusive because you're always striving, continuing to strive for it. Restless goes from thing to thing to thing. So with that accomplice saboteur, multiple things, maybe starting a lot, but not finishing it, not really happy, and bouncing around a lot. Stickler likes things just the precise way. So you can see by the picture here, there's a right and there's a wrong way, and they want it to make sure that it's the right way each and every time. The pleaser puts the needs of others before themselves to an extent that it minimizes their own personal power. So a pleaser is always looking to be liked by other people and do things in the desire to be liked or admired or appreciated by other people. Hypervigilant is always on the lookout for something to go wrong, and we'll be looking for all of those things, seeing them everywhere, and you can see often nervous or anxious about it. The avoider thinks that if we just ignore it, it'll go away. And we know that isn't true, but that's the avoider. The victim often high emotional volatility, kind of a woe is me. Everything is always being done to them. That would be the victim accomplice saboteur. And the last one is hyper rational. There's nothing like data, facts, and figures. And those are really the top ones that they look. Now, all of these, as you're looking through them, the reason that they're accomplice saboteurs is because they're driven by negative emotion. So all of these things are driven by negative emotion. So what I'd like to do next, and I've got the descriptions for each of them, is again, back in the chat, I'd love to hear a little bit more about which one do you think might be yours? So I kind of gave you the description. There's a written one for each of these. And so in the chat, which one you think might be your top accomplished saboteur? So I'll let you know my own. I'll disclose. My top two are hyperachiever and pleaser. So those are my top two accomplished saboteurs. So let's see what folks are seeing. Oops, we'll just go up here to the chat and see what we've got here. So hyperachiever and pleaser. So Jen, you're in good company. Restless, pleaser, controller, hypervigilant, pleaser, hyper-rational and stickler. So just know, and you're seeing this from folks, right? There's a different combination for every person, but really just having the opportunity to know this, you're going to be able to actually see them a little bit more. So I'll give you a real example of my pleaser. I had worked with someone and left on not great terms when I left the organization, but every year we made Christmas cookies, and I know this person really liked a Christmas cookie I made. It was a year later, and I'm at the post office mailing Christmas cookies to someone I don't like. Like, that is not even logical. And yet that's my pleaser in action, right? Like, I was going to such extents to still hope that this person likes me, and yet it's utterly exhausting. So that's really the importance of knowing these accomplished saboteurs and how they show up in your life. So what I'd like you to think about is, how might you name your accomplished saboteur? Something playful, something fun. I'll give you an example. I'm actually coaching a group of 4 women right now, and the woman has decided to name her accomplished saboteur Whiny Bitch. So it's just been so playful for her to be like, oh, there's Whiny Bitch showing up again. And it's like, that's not necessarily me. That's this voice in my head. My husband has named his judge, so he's done work on this as well. He names him Mr. Snooty. So he's like, oh, there's Mr. Snooty showing up. And what I would encourage you to do is, if you can come up with something that's playful or funny. For me, my hyperachiever saboteur, I call the taskmaster. There's a taskmaster telling me I can't rest until all the emails done or all the laundry's done. It actually takes its power away. So the more that you can understand that saboteurs are real and it's just part of our human condition, you can identify them and actually start to name them in a playful way, it starts to take their power away. So that's the first piece of this. And in this negative emotions, and as I mentioned earlier, like, well, isn't it good for you? Here's what I'd like you to think about. Well, is pain good for you? If you had your hand on a hot stove, how long do you need to leave your hand on the stove before you say, oh, take the hand off the hot stove, right? It's a second. And so these saboteurs can be very helpful. They might give you good information that something is wrong, that you want to pay attention to, maybe the hypervigilant to be on alert for something, but that's only for 1 second, right? So negative emotions as 1 second alert are helpful, but as soon as you stay in the negative emotion, it hurts your ability to see clearly or respond with empathy or curiosity or take laser focused action. And so if you have, say, a hypervigilant accomplice saboteur, that one alert, which is, oh, maybe I should lock the door, that's helpful. But after checking it 5, 6, 7 times, that might not necessarily be helpful anymore. And so knowing and understanding that the alert is good, but staying with it, you're in saboteur. Let's move to SAGE. So we talked a lot about this kind of negative side of the brain. Let's talk about the positive side of the brain. This is in the brain associated with positive emotions, peace and calm, clear-headed focus, creativity, and seeing the big picture. And when you are using or tapping into your SAGE brain, it operates from what we call the SAGE perspective. And the SAGE perspective is that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and opportunity. And I mean that every single outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and opportunity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this brief fable to you just as an example to illustrate this, to get you thinking about it. It's called The Stallion Story. And so an old farmer lives on his farm with his teenage son and has a beautiful stallion. And he enters a stallion in the annual country fair competition. His stallion wins first prize, and the neighbors gather to congratulate him. And he calmly says, "Who knows what is good or what is bad?" Well, his neighbors are puzzled, but they go away. The next week, some thieves come and they hear about the stallion's increased value. They steal the horse, and the neighbors come to commiserate. And the farmer says, "Well, who knows what is good or what is bad?" Several days later, the stallion comes back from the thieves. He escapes and he brings a bunch of mares, wild mares he had befriended along the way. And his neighbors are now excited and congratulate him. And again, he says, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" Well, a few weeks later, the farmer's son is thrown off and he breaks his leg. And, the neighbors want to commiserate. We know what the farmer says: "Who knows what is good or what is bad?" And finally, the following week, the Imperial Army marches through and they're conscripting eligible men. And because of the son's broken leg, he isn't enlisted in the army. The farmer's neighbors don't even come anymore because they know what his response will be. Who knows what is good, what is bad? And so when you think about it, right, the question is, which perspective is true? The saboteur is always going to tell you this is bad. This is really bad. And the sage is going to say, this is gift. This is a gift. The answer is whichever you believe becomes true. And so I'll give you an example. I was facilitating this group, and usually about 10 minutes in, this one particular person would do something and throw it completely off track. Well, I'm a professional facilitator, so I would handle it, but I'd be really annoyed with that person, with the group, and I'd get through the 2 hours, but I would be utterly exhausted. So before the next time I facilitated, I sat down and I said, okay, what could be the gift or opportunity of this? And I'm like, I don't know about that, but it came very clearly and easily to me after that. This is an opportunity for me to become an even better facilitator. So it's easy to facilitate good groups. It's hard to do it when there's a difficulty. So now what I did was I went into the next session. About 5 minutes in, the same person did the same thing that they did. And instead of being shoulders up and angry about it, I just got this sense of calm over me and said, this is the opportunity for me to become even better. And I made it through the 2 hours. And instead of feeling exhausted, I felt exhilarated at the end that I had navigated something so difficult. In fact, working with this group, they then came to me and said, I learned how to be a better facilitator by watching you in those difficult moments. A gift I hadn't even anticipated, right? And so that's really the sage perspective, is to always sit down and look at things as a gift or opportunity. So let's talk about the self-command muscle, which is that muscle that allows you to switch from saboteur to sage. And the way we do that, and the way we talk about it from a positive intelligence or a mental fitness, are these things that are called PQ reps. And what they are is it's focusing on one physical sensation for about 10 to 15 seconds that allows you to then choose which side of the brain are you going to let rule you, the saboteur brain or the sage brain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually practice one right now. And I'm going to ask you to, we'll do this one, which is called finger rubbing. So what I'd like you to do is put 2 fingers together with such attention that you can feel all the fingertip ridges of one finger against another. Right? It's a little tickly for me. Then what I want you to do is take all the fingers of one hand and I want you to rub them down the fingers and the palm of the other hand. Right? Okay. And we'll pause. So again, just 10 to 15 seconds. So what did you notice, right? A whole lot of sensations. But what we were doing, And what the science is behind this is by focusing on something other than our thoughts, we were able to bring ourselves back and now put ourselves in a better position to tap into that sage brain. So one of the questions I often get is, well, Melissa, how's that different than something like meditation? Meditation is actually a PQ rep, but oftentimes people meditate for longer periods of time, minutes, sometimes even hours. So I'm a firm believer in meditation, but here's the difference. This is 10 to 15 seconds that allows you to reset your brain. And what I love about it is it's really practical. So oftentimes, if you're in the middle of a meeting gone bad, a difficult client, an argument with a loved one, you don't have the luxury sometimes of saying, let me just go off and sit in a corner for 5 minutes and kind of do a little mommy time out, get myself back again, and then come back. Sometimes you only have 15 or 30 seconds to make that choice about, are you going to show up sage or are you going to show up saboteur? And that's what I love about this. By practicing these PQ reps, these mental muscles, and building them over time, it allows you, when they're in the heat of the battle, in the moment, to actually make a different choice. Now, there are hundreds of different types of PQ reps. So I'm going to give you a different one that will give you an opportunity to practice something different. This one, we're going to do a visual PQ. So what I'd like you to do is see something in front of you that maybe you see all the time, but you haven't really looked at. And what I want you to do is, just for about 15 seconds, get incredibly curious about it. So take a look at something that's in front of you and get amazingly curious. Look at the textures of it, the colors, the shadows. All right. So perhaps for some of you, it's something that's been on your desk or in the wall in front of you for a long time, and maybe you didn't pay attention to it that much. For me, it's this plant over here with all the variegated colors that I probably don't even look at, right? So that's the power of PQ reps. Now, let's talk about what's happening when we do those PQ reps. I will acknowledge this is a overly simplified version of the neuroscience of habit formation, but it illustrates the point. There's an event that happens, right? It goes to your brain and you have a choice about whether you're going to go saboteur or sage. Let's go back to the first situation we talked about. You're standing in line at the grocery store, right? So for me in the past, 99 out of 100 times, I would be annoyed. I'd be like, come on, people, let's get moving here. I'm a busy person. I wouldn't say it out loud, but that's what would be going on in the inside. Well, know that our brains are wired to pay attention to the negative. So it is so easy to slip into that, come on, people, let's get moving, because that's the way that our brains are wired. Now, what we're talking about is, by doing PQ reps, focusing on a physical sensation for 10 to 15 seconds, it allows us to pause and choose a different path. And so now you can actually create new neural pathways or mental muscles by stopping, choosing, and going sage. So for me in the grocery store now, instead of standing there and getting anxious and being like annoyed going through it, I'm a busy person. I don't often get just 5 minutes by myself. So I use that as an opportunity to just get my shoulders down and say, I got 5 minutes on my own. This is fantastic. I'm going to have an opportunity to just chill and just relax. And I use those 5 minutes to really just breathe, admire, maybe look at people in line, read the magazine, headlines, whatever it might be, and feel completely and utterly different coming through that line. And now I take that positive and relaxed through me, through my day. And so now, because I do this so often, standing in line really is like, oh, I got a long line. I don't even worry about it. I'm like, this is me time. And that is how I've built a new pathway. And you can do that with any of the things that are going on in your life as well. So here's the simplicity of the operating system that we're talking about. If you are feeling negative emotions, stop. Just stop. You know you're in saboteur mode. You're going to do some PQ reps. So focusing on one physical sensation, it could be listening, it could be visual, it could be breath, could be finger rubbing, any of those things. You want to start to activate your sage brain. Then you're going to assume the sage perspective that every problem can be converted into a gift and opportunity. So you're going to actually go into it and say, how can this be a gift and opportunity? And you're going to search that out. And then you're going to generate the opportunity of sage powers, things like empathy or curiosity and clear calm-headed action. And so those are the types of things that you're going to be able to tap into with the simplicity of the operating system that we're talking about here. So the question I get a lot is it really just that simple to shift from sage to saboteur to sage, even in tough challenges? The fact of the matter is yes, but the speed depends on your mental muscle strength. So I'll give you an example, like, going to class and having the instructor be late or standing in the grocery store. Those are little things for me. And those are almost invisible now. Like my resilience bounce back, instead of carrying them through my entire day, they happen in seconds now, which is absolutely phenomenal. But I'll talk about an example of a much difficult challenge for me. And so in July of this year, my sister, who was 50 years old, but a mental age of 4, so she had an intellectual disability, she tripped, she fell, and she was in the ICU. And I was actually in Europe when we were notified that she had been moved to hospice. And so at that point, I knew she wasn't going to make it. And the first thing I did was I pulled up my journal and I said, what could be or might be the gift or opportunity in this situation? I never would have done that, or certainly not as quickly. And so as my sister did wind up passing away, another kind of judge came up for me and said, well, that's not fair that your brother got to be there and you didn't. Like, I'm on the board of directors of her group home. Like, if there's anyone that should have been there at the end, it should have been me. And yet, again, the sage perspective tapped in really easily and said, you know what, Melissa? If I was there, I would have been there at the end. But this was an opportunity for my mother and my brother to have time with my sister and to gain closure that wouldn't have happened if I was there. And the only way for that to happen was for me to be on a different continent. And so that, whether it's really, really difficult challenges, those are the types of things that happen over time by building the mental muscle. And it wouldn't have happened for me day one as practicing this, but over time, tapping into the sage brain has become a lot easier. And again, starting to wire new neural pathways that allow me to tap into empathy and curiosity much quicker and much more often. So 80% of this is around building mental muscle. 20% is insight. So hopefully today you got some insight. Maybe you'll come up with a playful name for your saboteurs. You'll think about things. You'll stop and pause. Maybe try some PQ reps. That's awesome. But it is around building the mental muscle, and that takes time. And so what we say is it usually requires about 15 minutes a day for about 6 to 8 weeks. If everyone heard the phrase habit stacking. So what I do is I add my PQ reps in with things I'm already doing. I know for me, my hyperachiever, my taskmaster, email is a trigger for me. And so before I do email, I will actually do PQ reps. It not only allows me to not get swept away, but to be more thoughtful in how I'm replying to my emails, because I know that that could be a trigger for me. So it doesn't have to be 15 minutes at a time. It could be throughout the day, but that requires some initial practice. What's the impact of this? You can see just by the slide. So 90% using mental and emotional energy more effectively. I don't know about you, but this mental fatigue or fog that I feel like I'm in sometimes, 90% better, it actually allows you to tap into that more. In well-being, 91% managing stress better, right? Being able to handle life's challenges in a way that's positive. And strengthening relationship, whether it's improving relationships, conflict management, improved empathy, all benefits of practicing mental fitness. So there are a bunch of resources afterwards. Lauren will have a mental fitness reflection guide for those who have signed up. So we'll make sure to get that out to you. there's a Positive Intelligence website. If you want to actually, there's an assessment if you want to find out what your top accomplice saboteurs are. The book for people who are interested. And please, write down my email address. If you have any questions that we don't get to today, but want to talk about it a little bit more, please let me know. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. We've got time for just a couple of questions before we go into some of our items. So would anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? I know there's got to be at least one thing going through your mind. Come on. All right, I'm going to put someone on the spot. Jan, I don't know if you can open your mic, but I'd love if you could maybe just do a firsthand about the impact that this has had on you.
Yeah, Melissa, I'm happy to, and thank you for calling on me. So I had a chance to work with Melissa. Oh my gosh, it was during the pandemic, and I worked with her for the 6-week positive intelligence program that was coupled with sessions with Melissa, and also with using the app, which is incredibly intuitive and just a wealth of resources. And I got so much benefit from the program, and the reasons why I can say that are multiple. I started sleeping a lot better during the course of the program, and I had issues with insomnia for probably 18 months prior to that. I think some of it was stress related. I think some of it was hormonal, but I just found myself being at a much deeper sense of peace. I also was able to manage situations that would come up in my workday where I would naturally get triggered, kind of in meetings, right? And the finger rub is my go-to because it's just so discreet and it feels like really good. Like the more you practice it, it's amazing. This one is even more soothing, but you kind of, look a little zen as you're doing it. So I found it very easy to do before I even went into a more stressful conversation, just to spend a minute doing this before I even dial into the meeting. So it's very practical. It's very data driven, as I think all of you guys have seen. The book is fabulous. So I'd be happy to chat with people at any point. And thank you for calling on me. Thanks,
Jan. Well, with that, if there aren't any other questions, feel free to email me if you have questions afterwards, or if you want to talk about anything, I'm happy to do that. But with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on to Jocelyn DeMeo, and she's going to just talk about a few more items related to the Women United and some upcoming events.
Sure, thank you. And I really enjoyed I thought that your topic was very educational and really interesting. I do appreciate you sharing that with all of us. My name is Jocelyn, and I am one of your co-chairs for 2023 Red, White, and Chocolate. And before I get into the Red, White, and Chocolate event, I did want to share some amazing volunteer opportunities with you. The first is our United Way Readers program. So this program is available now, and we invite you to become a participant. This is our United Way Reader Volunteer Program. It provides one-on-one reading support to ages K-3 students across our entire region. And our 2022-2023 program runs from November through May. And volunteers will be paired with a K-3 grade student in a local elementary school for weekly reading sessions. And you can always choose between in-person and even online options, so really convenient. Let's go to the next slide, thank you. This is all about our VITA program, which stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. And the United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut, in partnership with the Village for Families and Children and volunteers, connect working families with opportunities through this VITA program and the campaign. And together, overall, we've helped individuals and families with annual incomes up to $60,000 get ahead financially They've been able to pay down debt and work towards saving for the future. So the question that always comes up is, what does it take to become a volunteer? And you really only need to commit to just 1 4-hour shift anytime from mid-January through mid-April. And there are in-person sites conveniently located all throughout the greater Hartford area, as well as Wyndham and other virtual opportunities as well. You need to have a willingness to help people in the community, which all of us do on this call. You don't need any prior experience to be involved in this. If you are Spanish speaking or bilingual, that's an added plus. We're always looking for volunteers who are bilingual in Spanish to help with educating that population and working with them. And what are you going to do as a volunteer? So you're actually going to help prepare an election and electronically file income tax returns. So you're going to greet the filers, you're going to manage appointment and schedules, you're going to talk to them about how to stretch their refunds so that they can put it towards something special, something that they need. You can also act as a translator for volunteers and filers, and you could also work with one household per hour on average. So it's not overwhelming, very doable. Hopefully you'll consider that. And on the next slide, this is all about a great evening that's being planned with Stephanie Land. So we are working in partnership with other Connecticut United Ways to plan a live stream book chat with the author of the New York Times bestseller, Made. You may have seen this Alice focused story on a series on Netflix. I did watch it. Anybody else? Our United Way will be gathering at the Connecticut Science Center to screen the book, chat with, and hear from a panel on the topic of Alice in observance of Alice Awareness Week. So that's a great event. Hope to see you there. And next up, we have our Women United 10th anniversary of Red, White, and Chocolate. And I remember 10 years ago when we were planning this event, it was the first time we were doing it. I was leading our engagement committee, and it was a blast, and it continues to be an amazing fundraiser, an amazing opportunity to get people together. So we're excited to share that Red, White, and Chocolate is celebrating 10 years. The event will be in person at the Del Mar in West Hartford on February 16th. And I'm thrilled to partner with Mackenzie Manning to bring this amazing event to you. Tickets are on sale now, and we need your help to spread the word. So our ask of you is to two things. One, sign up for a volunteer opportunity, and two, buy your tickets for this event and help us spread the word, bring a friend. And if you are interested in donating to our drawing, please reach out to Lauren. She is currently soliciting donations, and you can also reach out to me as well as Mackenzie, and we can make sure that we pick those up from you. Can't wait to see you there. Don't forget to get your tickets today. Thank you. And to close, I just want to say we also have our Power of the Purse, save the date, 6/8/23. Make sure you put that in your calendar. I think it was originally a different date. We've since updated it, so make sure you get that corrected in your calendar. And I do just want to say thank you so much, Melissa, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy calendars today to join us. Please do save the date, sign up for Red, White, and Chocolate, sign up to volunteer, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.